Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Tony Thorpe and today I will be talking about the Dutch elections. The past year gave us some of the most surprising events I've ever seen in my lifetime. To me, the last year was the year of Kek, the year of trolls, the year we saw trollkind step up to greatness. Because what are people like Donald Trump, Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson other than godlike trolls? I can't really call the Brexit campaign anything other than one big troll. I am keck with that though, because it was funny, and Donald isn't my president, I don't have to live in the US, thank fuck. But I do hope that 2017 won't be as interesting as 2016, because 2017 is election year in Europe. And in a few days there will be elections in my country, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And this will be our topic today, so let's get stuck in it right away, shall we? The mood in this election is weird. On the one hand, there are people that are completely done with all the politics and just want shit to get, well, better, I guess. On the other hand, there are people who feel that this is the moment. This is the election where it all will happen. And I do think there is a lot at stake, and if I'm honest, it scares me a little bit. The populace is polarized and it makes me, well, hesitant. It makes a lot of stuff bubble up to the surface. And the situation we find ourselves in now is not something that developed overnight. So let's take a look at how we got here. Over the last decade and a half, Dutch people have been through a lot. So has the so-called right-wing attitude. In the early 2000s, there was a lot of upheaval. Bush was elected, 9/11 happened, and we went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now this might sound a little general, but I too remember 9/11. I didn't really know what it meant back then, seeing as I was 13, 14 years old. But we went there right after the rest of the West. We were in Iraq, Afghanistan. Basically, we had the Americans back. But with this background, we also saw the rise of people who were no longer willing to keep their opinions to themselves. Back then, we called these people racists. What I'm talking about is the rise of Pim Fortuyn and his political movement. Before that, we never had a serious politician in the Netherlands who was so openly critical of the immigrant communities, or rather the Muslim communities in our country. Because from the moment they came to our country, the party line was integration. And it was simply not done to be rude or criticize these people, because they needed to integrate and we needed to be welcome and not stand in their way. But in the 2000s we saw a change in society and people didn't filter themselves as much anymore. There was also a realization that we should address, talk about or scream about the issues we were having. And this feeling has only grown over the years. Of course, the economic crisis of the past decade did not help with ethnic solidarity or trust in the government. But we didn't have that anyway, seeing that we had national elections 4 times in the first decades of the 21st century. And the fact that our current government is comprised of the main right-wing Liberal Party and the main left-wing Labour Party gives parties like those of Geert Wilders more space to develop, in my opinion. So what are we talking about? Well, what do these weird Dutch people really care about when they go to the polls? It's hard to say, really. There's what the politicians think people care about, and then there is what the people actually care about. See, the people want healthcare to be cheaper than it is, and some parties play into this nicely. The environment is pretty important, and oh, there's the education. All this is important, of course, but what people want the politicians to talk about is the proverbial life grenade that are our Islamic neighbors. And I see a lot of Americans on the YouTube talking about immigration and how awful it is in Europe. Oh, the refugees will be the end of Europe. Well, we'll have to see, but the bigger problem are the immigrants that are already here and the clash of cultures we have been experiencing for many years now. The protests and riots by so-called Dutch Turks are a fine illustration of the fact that migrant populations are maladjusted in our Western societies. The Germans are having the same problem with what everyone's favorite crowd calls self-segregated societies. And we see those in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in France, all over Western Europe. Personally, I think there's a good 60 to 80% of the population who feel these matters are what need to be talked about, and most politicians aren't willing to talk about this in any real sense. Hence the growth of Geert Wilders and his organization, which can be likened to any anti-PC culture movement. So, who are we voting for in this election? Well, in this election there are actually 28 different political parties represented, but not all of them are of very big importance. But let's start from the top. We have the VVD, the Volkspartij voor Vrijheid en Democratie, which is the Liberal Party. It's the mainstream right-winger party. They are liberal. They want less rules, less government oversight, less social spending, all that good stuff that liberals typically want. Then there's the CDA, het Christen-Democratisch Appel. They are the main Christian Democrat party. Currently they stand at 22 seats in the polls, a big climb from the last election. They are, let's say, the conservatives in our country. They like Christian values, and they are very big in rural areas. Farmers like this party. Then there's the PVV, the Partij voor de Vrijheid, the Freedom Party of Geert Wilders, who is doing very well in the polls right now. They are pretty left-wing socialists, other than their attitude towards immigration and Islam. Apparently makes them right-wing for everyone else, but I go by their political program and the way they vote in parliament, and that is absolutely left-wing. Also, their left-wing attitude is what made the previous government fall, a government which they were supposed to support. There's GroenLinks, it's a left-winger green party. They like, green stuff. Basically, they're the same as every left-wing green party in Europe, so not very interesting. They do have a very young leader who is doing quite well, pretty popular, and maybe they'll be in the next government, most likely not. Then there's D66, or Democraten 66. They're a pretty solid centrist democratic party. They like centrist stuff. They are for good education. They are good on defense. They are good on a lot of stuff. And I actually voted for them in the past. But now I won't anymore, because they won't discuss, like most other parties, the problems we are having with Muslims. Not so much Muslims, but minorities in our country. Then there's the SP, the Socialist Party, who are also doing pretty well, and they are socialist. Their main thing this election is a national healthcare organization. They want to scrap the system we have now, which I don't really like, and they want to basically go back to the system we had before 2002. After that comes the P van de A, the Partij van de Arbeid, or the Labour Party. They are the bitten dog this election. They are the people who are getting the stick this time, because they went into government with the liberals, and most of the liberal policies that were affected in the last governmental cycle have been blamed actually on the Labour Party, because this government was pretty liberal, pretty right-wing. They did what we call in Dutch ja knikken. They just said yes, okay, as long as we can govern, we'll agree with you. So no one's gonna vote. Well, a lot of people are still gonna vote for those fuckers, in the millions, but they won't get as many seats, by far not as many seats, not enough to be relevant in this election, I hope. Then we have 50 plus. It is a party for people who are over 50, or at least that's the demographic they are targeting. They want to bring back the retirement age from 67 to 65. They want to do all kinds of stuff with retirement, and basically they're the old people party. We also have the ChristenUnie, which is a Christian union. They are Christians. I believe they are, I don't know if they're Catholic. They are Christians in any case. And they are also very, very conservative. And that's basically their stick. Also, there's another party like this, the SGP, the Staatskundig Gereformeerde Partij. They are definitely Protestant, but they're also very, very conservative, and they usually get their votes from the more conservative parts of our country. One more party that's of importance is the Partij voor de Dieren, the Party for the Animals, which is ridiculous, and I hate them, and I don't agree with them at all, and I'm not going to talk about them because they suck and they're SJWs, and forget about it. And finally, well, there's a party which not it isn't very important right now, but I'm still going to talk about a little bit. It's the Pirates Party, and they are formed to the example of other pirate parties in Europe, and basically they stand for net neutrality, all that good stuff. So now, what do I think the next government is going to look like? Well, one thing I know is certainly it won't include Geert Wilders and his PVV. Why, you ask? Well, the most tangible reason is that there is a cordon sanitaire in existence around his party, which basically means that none of the other parties want to form a government with. And just to prove this, most of the, well, not most, all of the leaders of the big parties have already expressed this in public, so they won't be able to take it back anymore. So the only way he could come into government is forming a one-party cabinet, which is more or less impossible. See, in the Dutch elections, we are electing the members of the Tweede Kamer der Staten-Generaal, which is our parliament, and the Tweede Kamer seats 150 parliamentarians. Most governments are formed of the basis of having more than half the seats in parliament, and it's nigh on impossibly for any one party to win 75 or more seats in an election. This means that two or more parties will have to work together to form a government. They can, however, form a minority government of less than 75 parliamentarians. However, it would be very difficult to govern, and actually our last government, which was formed of the VVD and CDA, had also the PVV as a third party. They weren't in the government, but they were asked to support them, and in exchange they got influence in the government. But in 2012 they pulled the plug on that government because the PVV didn't want to cooperate with budget cuts. Hence, again, illustrating that they are a very left wing. So this is basically the reason for the cordon sanitaire this time, because none of the parties trust Geert Wilders anymore. And these parties will enforce this like they did when the Socialist Party got big all of a sudden in the mid-2000s. What happened then was the Socialist Party won a lot of seats and nobody wanted to make a government with it. So looking as it does, I think the most obvious candidates for government this time are the VVD, CDA and D66, because they are the parties together they have the seats, at least in the polls. They almost have the seats, so they probably will have to invite a fourth party. Usually this will be either SGP or ChristenUnie. That way they will form a government. That's probably the government we're going to get this time, barring any big upsets in the election. I doubt any of these parties will want to govern with GroenLinks because of political differences. VVD, CDA, D66, either centrist right or right wing. And GroenLinks is very left wing, and they're hardcore on the environment, which the other parties, meh. So they probably will invite one of the smaller Christian parties. Who the Prime Minister will be, and which party will get to form the government is something the elections will clarify. However, there is still a chance that the PVV and Geert Wilders might become the biggest party, which would give them the right to form a government, as this is usually done by the biggest party, the biggest winner. But this would also become a big problem, and I doubt they will be able to successfully form a government. And because they will at most get 30 to 40 seats, and this is really, they probably won't even get 30 seats, but at most 40 seats in a and in a parliament of 150 people, that's not enough to have a government. If you have 40 seats in a government, as the government, you will not be able to enact any policies successfully. Basically, you can't govern like this. Also, this would never be accepted by Parliament or the King. So even when the PVV becomes the biggest party, they wouldn't in all likelihood be able to go. So, who am I going to vote for? Well, this year I'm going for the troll vote. You all know what a protest vote is, an empty vote. Well, I'm going for the troll vote. I'm voting for the local pirate party. And so why would this be a troll vote? Well, of course I support net neutrality, all that good stuff. But at the moment they are hovering around one parliamentary seat. And it just seems really, really funny to me if they get it. I really want them to get that one seat. Because what's more important to me is their leader, what we call a lijsttrekker. See, in Dutch elections we have a list of candidates, and the person who leads that list is the lijsttrekker, and that person will usually become the party leader in parliament. But the lijsttrekker for the Pirate Party, Ancilla van der Leest, is a former model whose beauty graced the pages of different sorts of magazines, but she was in the Playboy 3 times. How awesome is that? And to me, that would make it a total troll. Having a playmate in parliament, I mean, who are we, Italians? Nah. And if nothing else, she would make parliamentary reporting a little bit more bearable. But the biggest reason I'm voting for the Pirates is because all the main political parties have something I don't like. I was considering voting for CDA, for the Christian Democrats, even though I'm not a Christian, but I like their morals. I like their conservatism, but they are against legalizing the production of marijuana, which I am vehemently, well, I don't know if that's correct, but I am very much for legalizing the production of marijuana. I will talk about that in another video. And then there's D66, which is, if you're a student, I would probably still vote that, but I'm not a student anymore, so fuck them. And also, most of them are cowards. They don't want to say the difficult things. They don't want to use the harsh words that are necessary to hopefully push these problematic minority populations into maybe trying to fit in a little more. Also, I'm definitely never voting for Geert Wilders because he's an idiot. He's not a good politician. He's a great demagogue, but he's not a good politician. His policies are the same as the Socialist Party, so why would I vote for him? So I was thinking, oh, my vote was lost for this election, and then I ran into this beautiful woman, and I'm voting for the hot babe, and I love it. So, praise kek, in Shadileh, and good night. See you next time.